Welcome to Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. Now let's join our host, Tom Shorkey.
Welcome to Conversations. I'm your host for today's program, Tom Shorkey. We try to bring you a variety of people from our area who have made a difference and have a little different theme of our program each time. Now today, many people have read about reinventing yourself after you retire. I think we have the poster child for that project with us today. It is my pleasure to welcome to Conversations the administrator of the St. Clair Chamber of Commerce, Pat O'Connor. Welcome, Pat.
Hi, Tom.
Well, you can't reinvent yourself unless you did something to start with, so why don't you tell us, what did you do for a living, Pat?
I was an educator, and I continue to be an educator, but in a different way now. But I started out teaching middle school chemistry, and then moved to middle school English, and on to high school, where I taught all the social studies and history. And I did that until 4 years ago when I retired from Dakota High School, which is in the Chippewa Valley District, one of the biggest districts in the state. I did a lot of things there dealing with curriculum. I was department chair, curricular leader for the district, and knew I wanted to continue to do some of those things, but to have the freedom of being liberated from 60-hour work weeks, as I'm sure you understand.
Now, you retired from Dakota. Did you spend your entire teaching career with Chippewa Valley?
I spent 4 years with Clintondale and then was laid off in that first rush of student reductions. That was 1978, and then by 1979 I was at Chippewa Valley, where I worked at Wyandotte Middle School, then Chippewa Valley High School, and then finished when Dakota opened. I was in the inaugural group of teachers that went there, and then I retired from Dakota.
Perfect. Now, what we usually like to set the tone for our audience is, now, Pat, were you a St. Clair kid growing up or not?
No. We used to come up here in the boat, and I was a boater because we lived in Harrison Township, and so I've always been an East Sider and certainly a water person. But I went to L'Anse Creuse High School, and I graduated from L'Anse Creuse before there was L'Anse Creuse North and L'Anse Creuse Central. It was just one high school. And I started in that school district when I was, third grade. So that's where I graduated from. So I've not traveled very far from where I started, really.
Well, in Harrison Township, for our listeners, all they have to do is think about Selfridge Air Force Base and the surrounding areas, and you've pretty much got Harrison Township covered. Graduating L'Anse Creuse High School, did you know what you wanted to do as soon as you left high school?
No. I was one of those kids that never played school. I'm embarrassed to suggest that I didn't think much of teachers at the time. I was going to go off, and I was a political science major, a journalism minor. I was going to break open all of those political stories that Carl Bernstein eventually beat me to. But there is a funny story how I got into education. Through my work-study program, one of the instructors, I was doing a semester home at Macomb because it was cheaper in between my freshman and eventually my junior year. And she asked me if I'd teach an English class. And I was 19, and I said, sure. Okay.
Why not?
And when I went into the classroom, it was firemen and policemen that needed an English credit. All I had to do was teach them how to write a 5-paragraph essay, and that was working towards their associate's degree in fire science. And so now imagine, I'm a 19-year-old young woman, and I go in my first classroom are firemen and policemen in uniform. That's probably not the best way to start your education career because you might be swayed by all that good-looking men. And I was initially, and then I discovered I loved to teach. It was an epiphany for me. And then I never looked back. I turned my credits into the best teaching degree for me, which was social studies. I was going to do English because I liked that as well, but I was advised to do social studies and history. I did, and I can honestly tell you that has meant everything to me in my lifetime. I love the field of teaching. I did not retire because I was tired or I didn't like it anymore. The last day of my teaching career was just as much fun as every other day. I am an educator and very much a professional educator. I still read about it. I still am up on the trends. It's a wonderful, wonderful profession.
Well, and then while you were working or in that process, though, even though you grew up in Harrison Township, which you can be forgiven for, you actually moved to our community, and I think it was, what, 35 years or so ago?
It'll be 36 years this summer, yes. I had 3 sons that I raised in this community, they raised in this community, certainly. They were 3 very active boys that loved growing up here. In fact, I don't know if you remember the time you and I were both on the facilities planning committee for the district, and you came in and said you'd just seen my middle son sliding around on the ice on Pine River. I went home from that meeting and gave him a real finger wagging. What are you doing on the ice? Because it was a little early in the season. And he wanted to know, how do you know? And I said, because everybody's eyes in the little community are on you boys.
Well, and sometimes it's hard to get away with things in a small town.
It is.
You retired from Chippewa Valley, and you were part of this community, and you've continued to work for Saginaw Valley with developing young teachers. But our real story here today in St. Clair is your work with the Chamber of Commerce. Now, how does someone who lives in the community but works in Macomb, finishes a career, all of a sudden end up with the Chamber of Commerce? How did that happen?
And maybe it wasn't so all of a sudden. Some years ago, probably a decade ago, Dave Gillis was in the chamber office. And when I would be uptown with my husband, we'd be walking by, and I would always say, that looks like a neat job. I'd like to do that. But I was working full-time, so I couldn't. When I retired, I continued with a lot of the activities that I'd been doing, volunteer work. I'm a member of the First Congregational Church, and I happened to be the moderator of the church at that time. I was president of the St. Clair Women's League. I had just joined the St. Clair Garden Club. I am a member of the Art Association. I do a lot of charitable work. I volunteer for the food pantry, Kids in Distress, all over. Wonderfully enriching my life doing those things. So I was at a chamber meeting because I thought I should join the chamber as part of the business world. We so oftenly go to them and ask them for things, and I think it's important to remind ourselves that we owe them something for that. We owe them support, we owe them loyalty, and we need to really join together to make the community something better than it was. So I joined the chamber. Very soon they suggested they were going to reopen the closed chamber office. It had been kind of only being staffed by volunteers for a while. It was a paid position, and I said, I think I could do that. So I applied for the job, and they hired me. I think they hired me because I'm old and I know everybody, but
But now they've got you as the administrator of the St. Clair Chamber.
They do.
So let's pop some holes in a couple of myths about chambers of commerce. I think many people think if you have a business and you own your own business, then you can be a member of the Chamber of Commerce. But it seems to me the chamber is a whole lot larger than that.
Ours certainly is, and I need to mention, every little place I travel to, I go to the chambers to see what they're doing and where their membership is. And I'm really pleased because I think our membership is more diverse than is typical most places. I reached out to all those groups that I was a participant in and said, we all need to be together here and have a common vision for the best use of St. Clair and its future. And so we have churches, we have governmental agencies, we have the schools. A lot of nonprofits are members of the chamber. A lot of businesses that are single-owned businesses, but we also have Sam's Club. I would like to continue to make it even more diverse so that we really have representation from all different kinds of businesses. Cargill is our largest business that is a member.
Well, if you have, when you started, the chamber was still in existence, but you say they didn't have like
They had a
an
little over
office,
70 members at
and
the
they
time.
had 70, and where are you at on membership at the moment?
I'm delighted to say that we're a little over 160 now.
Really? That's
Yep.
quite impressive.
And my goal is to take us to 200, and we've done pretty well increasing our membership in 2 years, but some of that has come because we've had new activities, we've done new promotions, we have made sure that we've been attached to several of those activities that regularly go on in St. Clair. We put our fingerprints on them, and we've also made a stronger relationship with our surrounding chambers, so that if you joined the chamber, which by the way, Tom, you can. We have plenty of single people who join just because they're part of the community. But if you joined and you wanted to promote something that you were involved in, I would put that out there. I'd get that to our membership, but then it would also go to Marine City's membership, Port Huron's Blue Water membership, which is big, and Richmond. We've also reached down 32 Mile
Well,
Road.
if we have someone in our listening area,
Yes.
you reference me, which is probably a good idea, something I should join. Sometimes people are reluctant, to get involved in a new organization, whether they're a business or if they're in a nonprofit organization or whatever. What would you say is the single most benefit that they could derive from membership in the St. Clair Chamber?
Well, it's absolutely networking. It immediately expands your business clients. It immediately, for the nonprofits, expands your opportunity to reach out and get support for whatever it is that your combined working group is. That's the first reason, is that very, very quickly you, without any big investment of money, because we're relatively inexpensive, reach many, many, many people. And you have the benefit of our website, our Facebook page, and me. All you have to do is say, Pat, I'm doing this, and I really want to reach out to people, and I'm there. I'll do that for you, and make sure that word is out.
And you don't necessarily, you reference individuals can join. You don't
Absolutely.
necessarily have to represent a group. Is that
Dan
accurate?
Lockwood is a member.
Okay.
Yes. Frank Moore is a member. And I could go on, and there are several people who want to be a part of that networking community, so that they know what's going on, but that they support those events. We live in a town where this is the most generous group of people that you can find anywhere. Every one of our civic organizations is constantly raising money for somebody or something. There is a reason for a single person who is of like mind being able to attach to those without having to do all of the groundwork of starting it, but wanting to support it. And so once you join the chamber, you're aware of those things through our newsletter and our weekly emails. And then sometimes people will just say, I'm doing this, and I'd really like to get the word out.
Where's the chamber office?
My chamber office is in the best place ever, because I get to watch all those ships go by. I'm right in the middle of the Riverview Plaza, on the kind of north end of the middle. I can see directly Sally Ackett's and the Ackett's Riverview, so I can run over and get a piece of pie anytime I want. And it's the one building with a green awning that says St. Clair Welcome
And
Center.
you're looking right out at the newly refurbished courtyard.
I
area.
am. And when the weather's suitable, the door's open, I always have a group of people stopping by. It's a friendly place. People come with all kinds of issues and questions, and I'm getting pretty good at being able to, if I don't know the answer, I know who to call and how to find out what the answer
Tell me
is.
some of the exciting things that the chamber supports in our community.
Well,
Tick a few off.
I can really do that. We support nonprofit organizations like Kids in Distress and the Food Pantry with money, and there have been other occasions where we have taken monies that we have gotten together, like SNAP, the organization, the spinoff of the Humane Society organization. So we do that. But in the bigger scheme, the things that people are really watching for is all of the things that go on in the plaza, of course, which are craft shows. And then by the end of June, we have the St. Clair Art Fair, which is real big, and we're very supportive of that. And then we move to the 4th of July event, and then boat races, and then our own fingerprints are very much on the early August, we do a beer and wine festival. We've done 2. They've been great successes. We've had a different group of people hanging out downtown for that night, 20, 30, 40-year-olds that sometimes don't find they have enough things to do. And then now, this year, we're with the city, we will be co-sponsoring the 2nd annual St. Clair Jazz Festival. And that's probably the one that we're really most excited about right now because it's
You even
big.
had a little shaky weather last year, didn't you, for the first one? But it was...
I promised Alexander Zonchek that it would not rain. I'm a gardener. I said it never rains enough, so it's not going to rain that day. And we made it all the way to the end. And then it started raining at the very end. But there were people who were there with things over their head.
We just heard tremendous things about it.
Oh, it was fun.
So
It
you're
was just
coming
more
back for second year next year.
We are. It'll be a single day. Again, I think it's August 18th. It's that Saturday from that weekend. And the hope is, of course, that it will grow into a 2 and perhaps 3-day festival. Certainly, once we have a hotel in Marine City that opens, and that St. Clair Inn reopens, we think that that'll be a nice time to really bump that up and make that a real signature. But that's not all. We're also looking at, in the fall, we have another craft show, and this coming year, this is a secret, so don't tell anybody.
Okay.
But we're pretty sure we're going to do something that'll be about a 3-day expanse prior to Halloween. It'll be a fall festival with, I can't tell you. It's just going to be good.
We will wait for the
We're just rolling it out anyway. It's going to be great.
Well, you mentioned the St. Clair Inn.
Yes.
You were part of a group of people relatively recently that took a little bus tour or whatever down to a property that is owned by the new owner of the St. Clair Inn. Can you give our listeners a little shout out about what's happening with the inn? Is it going to happen? And how did you feel about your field trip you took?
Well, first of all, I'm a very positive person, so everything that comes through me always is going to sound very positive. I can't believe that it won't open and that this man will not do everything he said he was going to do. So I'm going to tell you that in advance. But his Romulus property that he did, I was very impressed with the quality of the renovation. It would be by far the best of the hotels that are in that area. So he seems to have a sense of what quality looks like. It's 21st century with technology, very classy looking, and that isn't necessarily the kind of hotels that are in that area, so he's raised the bar, I think. And he seemed quite committed to it. And that day he was there, we all talked and got a chance to ask questions. And my question was, we get a lot of rumors, can you dispel some of that? And he again invited me to email him anytime that a rumor came across the desk and clear up. And he's very reachable. It sounds like everything is moving along at the right way. The city has done the tax abatement, which does not mean he gets off tax-free. It just means any of the improvements won't be taxed for 10 years to encourage him, of course, to make that. It's not, that's not unusual. And that then said, made a commitment to the state that said, we're in this too. And so the hope was that the state would hurry up then and kind of do their part. He was hoping to have Hammers in there by March of this year, not opening for this season, but being open for the following season. So a year from this spring, say. And the vision, as on one of your previous shows that you showed your listeners, is quite aggressive, I think, for our town. And I think everybody's kind of waiting excitedly. But, we're still making progress while we're waiting for that to happen as well.
Well, that's good. And for our listeners at home, if you go to watchctv.org, click on shows up in the corner and then click on conversations. Dan Lockwood was our guest a few weeks ago, and he had the latest renderings, drawings of the projects that are going to be involved with the new St. Clair Inn. So if you go back to that Dan Lockwood show on our website, and it's kind of, Dan talks for about a half hour, and it's probably the last 10 minutes or so, but it is well worth taking a look at.
It is.
Speaking of other projects, you've got a cute little office and you can see the freighters and you can get pie and you're right across in the green space. But another person we had on our show last summer was Chris Paul with the Brew Pub, which was just in a little corner at the time we talked. And now as I visit the mall, it seems like it is coming very close to the chamber office. What are the plans for the Brew Pub down there?
Well, I just spent an evening at Warwater, a delightful little evening where I got a chance to talk to Chris about it, and he makes it sound like that he's going to move the brewery to the center of that piece of I and it will eventually become a full-service restaurant. That would be his vision. And this is real important. He is serving food now, and I had a little bit of it. It's quite good. It's bar-type food right now, but very, very good. So he is making movement, expanding food. I think that suggests that his footprint is going to stay there, that he's going to be a prominent part of the development of that plaza, and that he's moving forward and not waiting just for the St. Clair end, and has a vision, I think, that is quite aggressive and that should be quite interesting. The top floors, I believe, he's still interested in making those living space for people, which is pretty popular right now, and that might be quite interesting too.
If you ran into one of your former students from Dakota High School, and they said, Mrs. O'Connor, my husband and I and our 2 children are thinking about relocating, why would we want to consider moving to St. Clair?
Well, first of all, I think it's a high-quality school district. I think that's number one. By all the indicators, St. Clair does a really good job of educating their kids, and it has been responsibly managed, which is real important. The property values are very good in St. Clair. So if you make a property investment in St. Clair, you're more likely to get your money back out if you have to sell at some point or move on. That's the 2 very pragmatic, I think, reasons to tell that to a family with 2 kids. But in addition to that, it's a wonderful place to raise children. 3 of my granddaughters and 2 of my sons have located here. And they did so specifically because they wanted their children to grow up in this community where all eyes are watching out for them, where when they go to the grocery store, they bump into people they know. They still come to the homecoming parade and the Christmas parade because everybody's there. There is a real hometown feel and a real feeling that people care about each other here. In addition to that, it's safe, it's beautiful. There is no better place to get access to that river. Not that my children ever went swimming in that river. Everybody goes swimming in that river that has lived in this community, and there's an expectation that's there for them to use, and to go out and sit out on the sandbar directly off the pier here. Everybody does that. There's nothing better than that. And all summer long, there is one thing after another, if not just here in our town to play with, Marine City, Port Huron. You can go to the Bologna Festival up in Yale. There is something to do all the time.
You know, you answered that question so well. I'm thinking maybe someday you should work for the Chamber of Commerce.
I am so grateful all the time that board has given me the opportunity to do something that I thought I might really like, but I have discovered I really do love.
Who would be a couple of people in your life that were influential or were there when you needed them, kind of a thing?
Well, my 5th grade teacher, it's funny you ask that because I was thinking of her not too long ago. Because I'm an educator and I know the power and impact of what educators can do, I was thinking of my educators. My 5th grade teacher taught me to believe that I could do anything I wanted to do. And this is back in a time when not many young women went on to college, first of all, and if they did, they were to be teachers and nurses. Part of that is why I didn't even consider teaching initially. But Mrs. Young was just the best classroom teacher ever, and she inspired us to do things, took us places, opened so many opportunities and doors for us to think about. In addition to that, she really encouraged us to read, and so I'm a voracious reader, read all kinds of things. She is definitely one of those people. But the other person I'd have to say is I've been with my husband almost 45 years, and he is a real partner in all of this. He has allowed me to do a lot of things that perhaps put more of the burden sometimes on him. I'm very well traveled, and I was really professional in my career as an educator, in that it wasn't just in my classroom. I spoke at national conferences and was member of a lot of different things and had lots of opportunities, and he was very supportive of all of that. So I wouldn't want to diminish the fact that he's been my cheerleader for 45 years.
Great.
And a good partner.
How does Pat O'Connor want to be remembered? 15, 20 years from now, somebody's going to talk about an event in town or Dakota reunions or something, and they're going to say, oh, good old Mrs. O'Connor. How do you want to be remembered?
My students, that I'm with them, a lot of them on Facebook, and they know that I'm extremely political. And every once in a while, they'll bring up something I've said over and over again, which is, and you will appreciate this knowing you're in social studies, does that make sense to you? That's how I want that to be remembered. I believe in democracy. I believe in our republic. I believe in civic engagement. I want people to challenge everything that comes through and to them and constantly be asking, does that make sense? If I can do that, I would be a happy, ghostly person.
Great. And for our audience at home, you can see why we invited Pat to be one of our guests on Conversations. I hope this was informative for any and all people watching this in our greater Blue Water area. And it's very easy, as I have found out today. You can join the Chamber of Commerce in St. Clair, whether you have an affiliation with a business or a group. There's many good things happening in St. Clair and through the Chamber, and I think they could not have selected not only a great administrator, but a better cheerleader for what goes on in this community. On behalf of Cable Channel 6, I'd encourage our watchers, tune in to our website, watchctv.org, click on shows, click on conversations, and you can replay this or any of the other conversations that we've had over the past year. And on behalf of Channel 6, downtown St. Clair, I'd like to thank Pat O'Connor for being our guest today. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Tom.
You've been watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. If you have an idea for a future conversation, please contact us at www.watchctv.org. Thanks for watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey.